Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoops Show that explores the lives of players past and present and the figures off field that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today I had the great pleasure to be joined by John Eren. How are you?
Very good. Paul, how are you?
Yeah, very well. We're talking, I guess, mid-round at this point. We were just discussing as we jumped into the call that as we speak, Richmond and Carlton are playing, and it's half-time, and there's probably, half an eye from the both of us on the scores and how things are tracking there. There's, for both teams, the outcome is kind of important for us.
Yeah,
in terms of the movements of the ladder. So
totally.
Apologies.
So I'm actually looking at you, obviously talking to you, but I'll just zoom across to my TV.
Excellent. Very good.
And so I've got one eye on the TV. As you know, we're going to play them
next week.
Next week, and I just need to be on top of how they're playing.
Yeah, it's match prep and the early research and those sorts of things, right?
Yeah, totally.
Know your opponent. And yeah, so I guess like both of us kind of half an eye out for the score. So apologies, viewer/listener, if we trail away at any random moments as we kind of turn our attention to the live game that is currently being played. But John, I guess we'll kind of do what we normally do, which is kind of explore a little bit of your time and what interactions you have and hadn't had with the club. And because, similar to a very recent guest as well, you're involved in politics and specifically with more focus within the Geelong, Lara community, you've probably had a substantial, even as of today, you were down at the club. You've had several different interactions with the Geelong Football Club, its players, the community, and obviously surround yourself in the passion that is for the club. But before you got to that stage, how did you discover the game?
Oh, look, it goes way back. I mean, I was a child migrant that came to Australia, very fortunate to be coming to Australia with my family, obviously. And we lived in North Melbourne, so Arden Street was just round the corner. But way back when the Shinboners were really the Shinboners, and some of those
not what they are today.
Not what they are today, and obviously that for me the round ball game was very prominent at that time, and that is the world game. But to have a look at that game, I just fell in love with it, and I didn't go down the path of my family working for North Melbourne, but I went down the path of a cat.
Sorry, go on.
And so for me, it's just something that you grow up with, and then I started playing at school at lunchtimes and recess and all of that. And I just loved playing the game, and I felt like it made me part of the broader community.
Yes,
it's something that was Australian about me, and I think that's the uniqueness of Aussie rules football.
And so, as you mentioned, you're at this point you're coming from knowledge of the world game of soccer, football, depending on kind of the part of the world that people are describing the game from. So then you've discovered AFL. What was it about the game that really caught the eye, I guess, in the first place? Because, I don't know, I mean, I speak from a little bit of experience myself being on the other side of the fence there, where I was born and bred AFL, and I could never quite get into soccer in the same way. I kind of, even today, I tune in during kind of important moments. So, unsurprisingly, with a certain World Cup qualification that Australia attained this week, I was somewhat interested there, riding the bumps with us. But as a general rule, it never quite stuck. In your case, you're coming to Australia with some interest in soccer itself, but you've discovered this new game and totally fallen head over heels for that. What was it about the game in the first place that really struck you?
Oh, the shape of the ball. It was so hard to handle.
Just that dynamic,
and the obviously the full contact that you don't have in other games, and
yes.
And of course when you consider that it's really like in America, gridiron, they wouldn't play the Aussie rules football without their full gear on.
Yeah, they're still shocked today when they learn about it.
And even with the rugby league and other games, but footy is something that is full contact, and it's something, like I said, it's part of our culture. It's one of the holding sporting events that civilization has come across, and I suppose why it hasn't really translated to other countries taking it on board is because of the size of the ground.
Yep.
Where they might be limited in space and obviously land availability. And Australia's a continent. You know,
Yes.
we've got one thing we have got is lots of
Lots of
abundance of
space.
land. Um, and to that, look, I don't mind it not being a world game, but it still makes it very unique, even though it's not a world game.
Yeah. No, that's a fascinating perspective, and I guess when you've just discovered the club, Geelong was already amidst what was going to be, not necessarily knowing it at the time, but what was going to be a fairly lengthy premiership drought. North Melbourne, on the other hand, as you mentioned, pretty successful. They were what we kind of think about as, you know, the shin boners, and had that, you know, that spirit there, and, you know, they were a force multiple
Yeah,
times throughout kind of the years that Geelong was. It's not that we were a poor club, but we were an unsuccessful, and ultimately unsuccessful club in terms of, you know, what a lot of clubs get measured on, which is the checks and balance of premierships. Was there a temptation, considering the rest of the family has gone the way of North Melbourne, to go to flip and jump across at some point, or were you
I
hard line Geelong and
I just love the accessibility. It was just down the road from us, and it was a waist high fence. There was no big fence. You just
yes,
went went to the game and you just watched it, and it was great to watch. And no, I don't think I've sort of, you know, I wanted to be different. I didn't want to go with the main family
yeah,
following, and I suppose I was very young at that time, and you know, and like I want to fast forward to the '90s when obviously, you know, the Cats, you know, that grand final against the Hawks was a memorable one, and nobody would forget that. And in the '90s, it was the pivotal point: do we survive or do we go under?
yes,
Um, and you know, thanks to people like the now deceased and God rest his soul, Frank Costa and others, that and Brian Cook, and he's at Carlton now, but he was a big part of what has transpired in Geelong for the Cats. Um, and at that time, I got elected to Parliament in 2002, and clearly that was the Brack slide that we had. And Steve Bracks, as you know, as the former Premier, he loves his Cats, but he also understood the importance of sporting clubs. And certainly there was a lot of investment that was made by consecutive governments from that year, from the late '90s, I suppose, to
yes.
resurrect the club, because it was in a fair bit of debt, didn't have much direction, and it needed a bit of a boost from government. And thank goodness that the government was there. And you know, in my time as the Minister for Sport, Tourism, Major Events and Veterans in between 2014 and 18, and obviously we're now investing in the last stage, the full circle
Yes, nearly
of the
complete
ground.
finally.
$142 million is being expended there, and it's well worth it. You know, we have the wonderful Cats games. We'll have 9 of them, but also having the Foo Fighters there, having other events there. It's great for the economy.
Yes.
Every time there's an event at Kardinia Park, it generates about $3 to $4 million in the broader economic community. So from my perspective, it was a no-brainer. We had to get it done. And as the Minister for Sport who signed off on this, I'm really pleased that it's now going ahead. And I understand May the 1st next year, it'll be fully complete and ready to go.
Oh,
So
that was the date. I must have missed what the proposed, and obviously there's, you know, things can change, but
yeah, I
I
hope
didn't
not.
realise that was the
I
proposed
hope
date. So
nobody's going to pick up on this. But this is an exclusive for you, maybe.
I'll
Um,
keep that in mind.
Um, so look, there are obviously issues relating to labour supply, and COVID has brought about some challenges to building and construction. But it's going really well at the moment, and I'm really pleased at the level of effort that's been put in to get this ground finished and completed. And the other important point is that it'll be a 40,000 capacity stadium. Now, 40,000, as the former minister for major events, is the key number which you can attract major events.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, so if you want to attract major events with cricketing events, or you know, rugby events, or even soccer events, you need that 40,000 capacity, because otherwise it's not really profitable for the promoters.
Yeah, right.
Um,
That's just
and
that
so
key break-even threshold.
And that's why we have to spend that money that we're spending. As I call it, it's the MCG of regional Australia.
That's fair.
It's probably the best regional ground anywhere in the world, I could almost safely say, because of its, connectivity, accessibility. And today I was there with the Minister for Disabilities in making sure that nobody is left behind, and inclusion is a big part of what we're doing. And so there's an amount of money that's going into Kardinia Park to make it inclusive for people with disabilities, which is fantastic. And that's what a civilised society does. It doesn't leave anyone behind.
Welcomes all.
Welcomes all, exactly right. And so from my perspective, I suppose it's a proud moment. It'll be the proud moment. I won't be a member of Parliament next year, as you probably heard.
Yes.
I'm retiring. It's been 20 years I've been a member of Parliament. I've had some health challenges in the past. A cardiac arrest where I dropped dead on the floor of the hospital back on Father's Day in 2016. I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2019, so I've sort of drawn the short straw for health. But having said that, I can look back and the many legacies that are there as part of my time in Parliament. I'll be very pleased with all of that.
And I guess, to those points, without wading too deeply into the health side of things, I assume part of the rationale behind stepping away from your role after 20 years is really to be able to focus in on the health and look after yourself and provide yourself the best opportunity, I guess, going forward.
Well,
I'm assuming.
As you probably know, the occupation of politics consumes a fair bit of your time.
Yes.
And it's time away from your family, who are the most important thing in your life. My wife and I, we've been married for 37 years now, and we have 5 children, and we have 3 grandchildren from 1 child. So it's time to give back, I suppose, my time and my dedication to my grandkids, which to a certain extent I've sort of missed out a little bit with my kids. I don't want to miss out on that opportunity with the grandkids, particularly with Parkinson's. As the neurologist said, if you've got a bucket list, you might want to get it done, because Parkinson's is one of those diseases that you just never know how progressive or aggressive it could be.
It's volatile.
It's volatile, and every day is a different day, and 4 years is a long time. And I thought, no, I've been there, done that. I've been a minister. I've been a member of Parliament. I've done what I can. And you know what? The north of Geelong, where I represent, deserves the best representation. It's a great bunch of people out there that deserve nothing but the best. And if I can't give 120% for my community, I'm going to give it up. That's just my nature. And so I'm hopefully handing it over as the successful candidate for the Labor Party is Ella George, who will be hopefully after the election she might win and carry on the legacy that I've left behind, and our government. But it is very much about those things that sometimes you sort of are complacent about. Time. I just want to run you through some statistics. One, I think in Sweden, they calculated an average lifespan to be about 70 years, and some die earlier, some die older, but on average 70 years. And you break down 24 hours into 3, 8, 8, and 8. 8 hours of your day, some less, some more, you sleep. So that's 22 years of your life you're actually sleeping. And from birth to puberty, about 12 years of age, you're sort of developing both physically and mentally. It's a blur.
Yeah.
And so those
disappears.
Disappears. So, add that, it's 35 years. And some work more, some work less, but there's another 8 hours of the day that you work. So if you calculate that at 20 years, that's already 55 years allocated for things that are part of life. And you don't want to mention traffic, shower, toilet, and all
those other things along the way.
So that's about another 3 years. So 58 years of your life is accounted for. And then you're sort of left with 10 years potentially that you can call your own. And you think, you know what, time goes really quickly, life is too short. You do the best that you can, and then you move on to look after and care for and be with those ones that you love the most. And that's my time, and that's why I've decided to call it a day and move on.
That's a really fantastic way to look at it, and like a statistically driven way to look at it as well. But Like it really, I'm sure there's a lot of eyes that have opened when you just laid the numbers out in front of people there. So I'm a maths teacher myself, and it's just not one of those things that I'd necessarily even thought about in that sort of context. But you're 100% right. I mean, I think about myself. Here I am, 33 at this point, and I mean, I've got two children myself. But like I'm going to be running those numbers now far more often, I think. How much more can I squeeze out of my day to spend with them? What can I sacrifice here, there, so that I can support my family? It's a really fantastic way to look at it.
It's a partnership between your partner and yourself.
Yes.
And, depending on what you're doing as an occupation, depending on, somebody has to earn a living, whether it's your partner yourself, it's a juggling act. And,
yes.
But whoever is working the longer hours, it's just quality time. And that's what I tried to do through my career, is provide that quality time with my kids. So when I was with them, it was actually full on focused on them,
Yep.
And so that turned out pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with all of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then within the professional capacity, you've done some incredible things. And again, I mean, obviously we'll be quite focused on the club, which, we talk about the stadium and the upgrades to those sort of things, but you've done some incredible things within your role over the journey as well. And I guess if we do zero in on the club itself, and you mentioned your I guess official time within the system there began in 2002. And through that 20-year period, you've seen, I mean, it's almost perfectly in sync with the rise of the Geelong Football Club as well, which I'm sure, given where the primary focus of your work has been for the bulk of that time, it's probably been a pretty enjoyable
it has been.
Pretty enjoyable time.
No doubt about it. It's been enjoyable, thoroughly enjoyable. And to see it become what it is today, and the successes that are around the club, winning the titles in 7, 9, 11 was an indication that if you invest within a facility, it gives not only the psychological positive effect on the players and the club, but also in terms of the wider community. Because, when Geelong play at home, I can tell you this, when Geelong play at home and they win, town is going booming. Like,
yes.
The restaurants are full. People want to go out to the bars and clubs and have a drink and celebrate.
Yeah.
It's a big part of the psyche of Geelong. And it's the only regional club that's left in the AFL. And we as a government identified that, and we thought we've got to protect this club, nurture this club, and do the best that we can for its survival, and to make sure that it's sustainable going forward. And thank goodness we've made those determinations over the past 20 years.
Yeah, and it's paid incredible dividends for the club and for the community. So
totally.
Congratulations on all your involvement within that. And I guess the 1-2 punch there between yourself and Steve probably helped with a few of those things. Yeah. I suggested to Steve last week, he was talking about, as you mentioned before, kind of the investment in sporting facilities and kind of building that up. And look, he was trying to be very diplomatic and talk about, we gave money to the other clubs and we supported St Kilda, we supported Hawthorn, whoever it happened to be. And I thought, but you've a little extra 10% for Geelong, right?
Yeah, but totally, and totally. But can I just point out that it wasn't actually just the elite end of the sport?
No, it was grassroots as well. Yeah,
invested in all of the grassroots clubs. Geelong West Giants. There was 7.5. That's in my electorate.
Yep.
You go there now. It's the Taj Mahal that it deserves to be. 7.5 million from state government. I think 3.5 million from council, and it's a council asset. We put more money into that facility than the council themselves. But right across Geelong, like every single the female change rooms, because of our attitude towards women in sport, 51% of the population who traditionally miss out. My daughter played for the Geelong West Blue Cheetahs when she was about 11, 12 years of age. She played footy, and there was no girls team. She wanted to play footy, so she played with the boys under 11s team. But the problem for her was she had to get changed at home. She couldn't go and shower in the change rooms, and so whereas the 4 boys that we have, piece of cake.
No issues.
Take them to any sporting club, they fit right in. They enjoy the amenities. They enjoy the camaraderie. and all of that. And I just thought that was inherently unfair for women and girls not to have the same opportunities as boys and men do. And so we've invested now, literally, and no other state government in the nation have invested more than we have into women in sport. And I'm glad to see that the new federal government are coming on board. They are keen to build female facilities as well, in combination with the investments that we're making, so we can maximise that opportunity.
Yes.
Football, Aussie rules football, has increased in women and girls' participation 1,000% since the time, with the AFLW coming on board, because there were certain. I was the minister that signed off on the grand final being played at the MCG until 2058.
Right.
And there was some criteria and some of the requests that we were making, obviously, to make sure that we have our policies were very focused in on making sure that women and girls don't miss out. And I had Gil McLaughlin just recently at North Shore Footy Club. And we invited him over, Richard Miles and myself invited him over to talk about what the AFL from the elite end can do for the grassroots, so that clubs like North Shore, who are struggling in terms of participation for varying reasons,
yes,
how can they add value to the work that the state government's doing? And I'm pleased to say that we're already kicking goals, and they've made it their task now to hone in as a pilot program in Geelong, North Shore, for the nation, in terms of how the AFL are involved with grassroots footy clubs that need them. So that's a work in progress, and
yeah, these things take time for sure.
Yeah, but at least we had Gil out there. We had all of the key AFL the hierarchy in being involved in North Shore Footy Club, which was a powerhouse in its day, and obviously, for varying reasons, it's dwindled down in terms of numbers of, COVID has had a big impact, obviously, in participation rates of people playing football, and so has many other sports. So there's a real challenge for governments with the Com Games coming up, for example, and we've got a number of events that we'll be holding with the Commonwealth Games in 2026. And there's a power of work that we need to do leading up to that if we want it to be successful. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, for sure. And great for the regional community.
Totally. And sport is something that we can't do without. The sports industry is worth $8 billion to the economy. $8 billion. That's literally tens of thousands of jobs.
Yeah, that's a number that your average person, it's hard to visualize $1 million, let alone $8 billion. $8
billion. So whether it's the shoes, the sporting shoes, the tops, the singlets, all of that sporting equipment, all of that venues that serve the food at different outlets, and all of those things combined, they've done a calculation. It's about roughly about $8 billion to the broader economy. So sport is not only, if you're fit and healthy physically, you're more likely to be fit and healthy mentally, as they say. So it's an outlet. Like when the footy season's over, people go, oh, what do we do now? What's the summer sport? You go to watch cricket, or there is always something that you want to watch in terms of sport, whether you watch it or play it. But sport is such a big part of our life, and it makes the world go round. So power to the organisations armed that make sport. Like, I'll give you one example. There are 9,500 sporting facilities in Victoria.
Yep.
There are about 15,500 sporting organisations that are registered. And there are 650,000 volunteers that make those clubs and organisations tick from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And so without those volunteers, it makes it really hard. And so from a government perspective, we want to build the facilities that can take pride in.
Yes.
Like Anarchy Football Club. Like, I'm not sure if you've done the rounds with the local football clubs. I'll be out there in July for another event. We just went out there recently to give them some more money to build a netball court out there, apart from the monies that we've given them for their pavilion.
Yes.
And so every club is benefiting from my government, and I'm so proud of it. And you know, all of my kids play sport. Growing up, they are well balanced, law abiding, you know, good kids, good. Well, they're adults now. My youngest is 22, my eldest is 36. But you know, they're all contributing to the broader society. I think without sport would be a different place.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, in the case of my kids, they're 1 and 3, but you know, every opportunity, I mean, they're obviously still developing a lot of motor skills and those sort of things, but get the ball in the hand and like, throw it around, kick it around, whatever it is, run, just get physically active. All these sort of things are really important. I guess one thing and it's something that it hasn't been an opportunity up to this point to kind of talk about in the show. On the show, one of the things you were talking about before was obviously the involvement in girls and what you're trying to do there for you know, the additional change rooms and the more inclusive and the approach there. I guess like it's just kind of triggered some old memories for myself there. We're thinking about my junior footy days and we had in my particular team here in Gisborne, and my particular year we had 2 girls on the team who I would argue that on any given day of the week any given game, you know, in the month or whatever, would be walk up your top 3, 4, 5 players in the team every single week. And it was, I mean, they were so incredibly valued by everyone on the team. But just as you described for your daughter there you were talking about,
Yeah.
eventually a time came where they just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, from a team dynamic, it was such a shame, but you know, they're also just fantastic people. And it was such a shame that there wasn't a structure in place that would allow them to either remain a part of that team or just a part of the club more broadly. They just kind of vanished.
Yeah.
It was so disappointing to lose some friends from the team, let alone some fantastic players as well. And it is fantastic to hear that you know, over the years, and especially you know with the introduction of the AFLW and what it's really doing in terms of shining a spotlight there and providing more outlets and opportunities, that we're then getting that structure coming in and around that to continue to support and continue to grow the game for this, as you mentioned, 51% of society there that have maybe been, unfortunately, kind of, for want of a better phrase, ignored or not properly supported over the journey.
Totally, and it's time to change it. That's why we now have a women in sport special department in the Sport and Rec in Victoria, which looks at any investments that we're making, how that relates to women and girls in sport. So it's a dedicated department which looks at all of that. And it is very much about being fair, because 51% of the population, they pay their taxes too.
Just as much as everyone else, yeah.
Just as much as everyone else. And it's good for the broader society, and I think it's good for clubs, because the more people that comes through the club, the more monies that are generated. And it's good all around. And you know, I'm really happy. Like, I'll give you one example. Netball Victoria, Rosie King, yes. Wonderful CEO. We're in contact regularly, and they wanted a centre of excellence. They wanted a home for netball. They never had that. The Vixens and other elite players, they needed a home. So we, in Parkville, if you get an opportunity, go out to Parkville, a netball and hockey centre.
Yeah, I've actually played a bit of mixed netball over there as well. So I've had the pleasure of just experiencing that on court, let alone just from the sidelines. But
I'm not sure how recent that was, but if you see
years?
it, no, go there now. It is a totally different place.
I'll have to drop in there.
We've invested $65 million into that facility, and as a state government. And when I told Rosie this, she actually literally had tears in her eyes, and it was such a long drawn out. And that was the largest amount of money given to women in sport anywhere in the country. No other state did what we did, and you know, it's the right thing.
It pays dividends.
It pays dividends, and hockey share that facility with them, but it's their home, you know, collectively. And you know, for what it's worth, I know you pigeonhole certain gender sports, but
yes,
I
historically,
remember my wife when she was playing netball back in the early '80s when I met her, and it was back in 1982 maybe.
Yep.
So we decided to do a mixed netball team. So I was one of the first men playing netball back in 1982, It's a tough game. It's not.
Oh,
It's
the
pretty.
knees and the ankles cop an absolute hammering, don't they?
Totally, totally. And the thing is, you don't want to pigeonhole people. That's why now we've got football and netball, for example, in clubs, and and we've got a special dedicated fund to cater for football and netball. But there's more women that are wanting to play football now, which is fantastic, and that's what we encourage every club out there to have a women's and girls team, and we encourage them if they want to maximise on state government money, that 40% of their committee at least must be women on board.
Good to hear. No, that's really really good to hear, and hopefully that all everything follows through there perfectly, and that growth continues in the much longer term.
Totally, and it will. Like if we keep giving assistance to the 51% of the population, encourage them to come and play sport. Doesn't matter what sport it is,
Yeah,
whether it's the Aussie rules or the world game or cricket,
netball, yeah.
cricket, netball, whatever. But it's about being having access and equal opportunity to that sport, and nobody should be deprived because going back, like the sporting clubs that accommodated for men and boys only, it was putrid. The change rooms, the toilets, like it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was unhygienic for even men and boys, let alone anyone else. So now you go to sporting clubs, and most of them, like we've invested heavily in the north, and because there's a lot of sporting clubs in the north.
Yep.
North Geelong Football Netball Club, in Cricket Club. You look at every single sporting club; they are now accommodating of women and girls, and that's just a decent and right thing to do, and I'm proud of it.
No, it's fantastic, and yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these changes have helped elevate the standards. Again, you talk about the state that some of these change rooms or whatever would be in, and they were just disarray would almost be the right word. Sometimes it was, and yeah, horrible state and unhygienic, and just all of these changes to allow access to multiple more people, but also and different groups, but just the financial thing when people recognize that money is being invested in something, there's just a natural sense of accountability that kind of comes with that, and a responsibility that people want to take for these things to maintain it and to improve it. You think about the first time you bought a new car, and there's always the you're so careful, and anyone who gets in, don't dirty the seats, don't do this. Like you really, really protective of these things for as long as you possibly can be. And I think the same applies here, is that when these investments come along, there is that natural, I need to protect this, I need to look after it, I need to treasure it, I need to value it. And it's fantastic these sorts of things are happening.
Totally. And I'm just sort of noticing that Carlton's coming back, for your information.
Fantastic.
So
I tipped them. Fantastic.
So it's third quarter, 2 minutes 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, down by
go.
14 points.
Down by 14 points. So it's game on. But anyway, I wish Tigers all the best, but I hope some of them, are not prepared for next week.
Yeah, Dusty's cold can last a little bit longer and all that sort of stuff. So I guess focusing on back on the game itself. Now, you were obviously in politics at this point, and you spoke about all the investments that have been made and your involvement in the club up to that point. But as we mentioned before, you arrived after 1963, and so hadn't witnessed a Geelong premiership. So how was 2007 for you personally? Obviously, there's the involvement that you've had along the way, but you are a Geelong supporter at heart. So what was that like when we finally broke through in 2007?
Magnificent. It was every monies that up until that point that we've spent on the club was totally justifiable. With that in mind, and the feeling that I got was I was a part of that success, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was just a tremendous moment, not only in terms of personally, even if I was just not a member of Parliament, but
a member of the club, just a member of the club.
Member of the club, or just a Geelong supporter. It was a great time. But to know that behind the scenes, all of the things that were going on at that time, and to win that premiership, it was a delightful thing to happen. And then
9-11 as well.
9/11, and I just thought this is great. This is fantastic. So look, since then, I think we've been a dominant club for the
Oh
past
yes,
more than a decade. Like, how many prelim finals have we played? We've really. I don't think we've been out of the eight. Uh,
once,
yeah,
2015, once.
2015, and so when you think about those successes, and this year's not over.
No,
I did bump into Chris Scott and Andrew Mackey the other night when I went out for a dinner with family, and we had a quick chat, and I just said, look, imagine 4 weeks ago with Melbourne. Like, nobody would have thought four
yeah,
weeks ago Melbourne were in second gear. They didn't even put into third gear, and there's not a team that can beat them.
and
And
now all of a sudden,
Collingwood beat them last week. Like, I'm not laughing at those Melbourne fans, but I'm just saying
a little bit.
that depends on where you are at as a club, as a player, a team, where you're at psychologically and physically at a certain point in time makes all the difference. On paper, we're one of the best clubs in the AFL. Like, there's no reason. Like, you think of some of the Tom Stewart has to be the best fullback in the league.
Yeah.
And you think about the combination between Tomahawk and Jezza. You know,
Good luck
it's
to
just
Stephen May and Jake Lever if they're on
absolutely,
and not plagued by a flu like Jezza was last year.
like Dempsey and De Koning, and you look at one of my favourite new players, Stengel,
Yes.
and Eddie Betts is doing a great job. Eddie Betts is fantastic. I think Tyson Stengel is one of the most exciting players I've seen in a long time. And
Has
he's
a
going to make
very legitimate argument to be all Australian at the end of the year based on just the sample size so far.
Totally.
If we can extrapolate, he might be in it up to his eyeballs.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm getting goosebumps as we're talking about it. Like, the investments that we've made into the young players coming through and how they've been nurtured, and how I'm really like I think Radigalea is such a powerful player.
Yep.
And I can't wait for him to get back on the field. And he's still young. Like, he's still
Oh
young.
yeah.
And he'll be a very dynamic player over the next couple of years, and I can go through the whole list and every single player, Captain Courageous. How much more courageous could he be?
Joel.
And how like, for the last decade, his tempo, he gets the touches that no other player would get. Like, I'm just amazed at Joel Selwood. I'm a big fan of his. He's a great leader. He makes the team tick, and people respect him in the club. And I don't know whenever it is that he's going to call it a day, but I really hope for some of those players that have done the hard slog over the last 4 or 5 years, that this year
The
at least
reward
play in
finally
the grand
comes.
final. Hopefully, and then people can rest after that and move on if they need to move on. But it's an exciting time. And it's certainly a time when especially after COVID, it's been really tough on communities.
Yes.
2.5 years of hell, being obviously restrictions in place. Though we watch footy on the TV, and I am a bit surprised at the lack of attendance now at the MCG when people are free to go. But there are some other issues that needs to be resolved, because I think the inflation rate is causing some angst in terms of, apparently I heard on radio that a souvlaki costs $17 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it sort of takes it out of the reach of families going, you'd need to take a couple $300 with you to go to a footy game. And sometimes with the petrol prices and
if you've got to commute as well, yeah.
You've got to commute and all that sort of stuff. It's so there needs to
puts
be
it
a
out of reach.
solution. Puts it out of reach, and when it's cold and you've become a bit of a hermit through COVID and you like staying home now.
Yeah, you get a little bit used to watching it on the screen, and
well, if you've got a big screen, right, and you've got surround sound,
which we saw before, you're doing okay with your big screen over there, so
yeah. But I love going to the games live as well. But
oh, you and me both. I'm devastated that I still haven't been yet, as we were saying before the show. I'm itching for a game.
But the thing is, like, I think all of those things combined makes it a tough. They've got to make some tough calls. The AFL, they make a lot of money through obviously their deals that they do with TV rights and all that
Yes.
sort of stuff. So I think it's time to,
It's
at
what
this
you can
point in
pass on from
time.
there, right?
Well. My view is, if they want people to go to the grounds and spend some of their money, they've got to, step in at some point and have a look at how they can subsidise some of these costs
Yeah.
associated with going to games. My view, but
No, I'd agree. Making it
uh,
more accessible.
totally.
100% agree. And so, do you have a favourite of the that 2007 9/11 period? As you highlight, and even now, who knows, 2022 could be another positive year for us. We are there and thereabouts. But do you have a particular favourite of those? Is it 2007 because it was finally the breakthrough, or was there just did 9/11 trumpet?
2007 was the one. I wasn't born when the last time we won. I'm a '64 baby,
Yeah,
and
missed it by a year.
yeah. So for me, 2007, every part of it, I just loved it. And then complementary 2009 and 11 when they came along, I just thought, what a great time to be a cat supporter. And I think our membership is at about 67,000 now.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Last I
I think.
yeah, mid to high 60s was kind of the last figure I heard.
Yeah, so you'd think that we've increased our, if you look back into the late '90s and early 2000s, I think we were at about 30 something thousand.
Oh yeah, it's been a dramatic
Um,
improvement.
yeah, and I just think every time Geelong wins a game, every time Geelong puts in what people don't sort of like, and they get a bit taken back by, is if they can see that the potential of the team, but somehow something is wrong that they're not using that full potential, and I totally get it. You can see it sometimes when players have a bad day, like even last year when, I mean, we didn't know that there were so many players that had the cold and flu and viruses. And when Richmond beat us in that grand final, when, for example, single-handedly, Dusty
Dusty just ripped it away.
dismantled all of us collectively, and I thought, you were in front, you were like, you know,
Yeah, how
but
did you
that
let
is
this get away from you? Yeah.
that was our chance of winning a grand final, and that's why I'm looking at the score now, and I'm hoping that next week we're going to get our vengeance again.
Yes.
But the thing is, never give up hope. Always, think positive when you watch, even wherever you are. Just think, and the vibes that you present, I reckon, has something to do with how the team. There's nothing like a live crowd. Like, you can hear the MCG, the roar that happens. Like, from a player perspective, when you hear that roar, your adrenaline just rushes, and you just want to try harder. But
And
I
even
think
as
that,
even as a crowd member, it continues to whip people into a frenzy. I mean, we talk about
really,
the fact that I'm itching for a game myself. Like, I haven't had that roar in the ears, that ringing that comes from it, that then becomes electric throughout the whole stadium. Especially if it's quite packed. Which my hope is to go to Geelong and Richmond next week, and presumably, I mean, it's a Saturday afternoon. You'd like to
I
think
want
50, 60, right? And to,
to.
like that,
That's
as
right.
that builds and that builds and it builds and it builds, it just, you feel it in yourself, especially if it's close and the stress starts to come in. But like, I miss that. I so desperately miss that. And for me, it's just been
Yeah.
opportunity and having little kids. But
Well,
um,
I'll tell you one other story. In 2016, like I said, on Father's Day, I had the cardiac arrest. So, and then in 2016, if you recall, we were playing the prelim against Hawthorn,
yep.
and
Uh,
Isaac Smith
the qualifying. Yep.
qualifying.
Yep.
Sorry, qualifying. And Isaac Smith had the ball, and it was kicking
Cheeky
for
grin
goal.
and
And I'm watching the game, and my doctor said to me, "Don't get excited watching games because you've just had a heart attack, right?"
good luck.
And I'm there, I'm watching the game. I turn around, my whole family are watching me. I
They were
said,
just concerned for
they
what
were.
that.
They said, "Dad, just are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all right," but my heart is going boom, boom. And when Isaac Smith missed that goal, I thought, "Thank God." Now he's playing for us, but that was a memorable moment when I just come out of surgery for a heart attack, but But that's what, but that's what it is. This is what the game is. It pumps your veins,
Yeah.
your blood, your adrenaline, your heart, everything. You know, you have a workout without having a workout. Watching a game,
Mentally
um,
tiring.
mentally tiring. So yeah,
Let alone for the players out there who are doing all the hard yards as well.
no, that's right. That's right. So I look forward to this season and next season when I'm retired. I tell you, I'm going to go to every single game. I'm not going to miss it. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm certainly really looking forward to that point where my son, who's currently 3, he's old enough that I can take him to a game and know like the one footy experience I've had, I guess, since COVID. I managed to duck into Geelong and Hawthorn last year before everything shut down, before the numbers got cut and everything like that, and
Yeah,
that was fantastic at my field. But in 2022, the one game I've been able to see was the preseason game where we had Richmond down at Geelong. And
yeah,
they played 6 quarters because obviously the final 2 there were kind of to get the VFL guys a bit of a run as well. And I brought both kids to that, and obviously a 1-year-old daughter didn't last very long, but my son, like, I could see him getting into it. He was trying, but it's a very, very long time for a little kid to
yeah.
see out. Let alone we add an extra 2 quarters onto it as well. So we had to leave a little bit early, but like I can't wait for what I'd hope is maybe a year, maybe 2 from now, where he does like the game. We, even though we're watching it on the TV, can we do go Cats, Dad? And yeah, and so pop him up on the shoulders and we're jumping around whenever there's a goal and all those sorts of things. The kids love it, so they've kind of got that love of the game instilled already. Now I just can't wait to be able to take them, and that obviously helps me get my fix as well. But I'm just so desperately looking forward to being able to share that experience with my kids and get to do it on a somewhat regular basis, hopefully.
Yeah,
And I've
totally.
persuaded my wife to join Geelong. She used to be Essendon when we met, but thankfully we met. My fanaticism for Geelong collided with her displeasure over the drug scandal, and so I was
Yeah.
able to quickly pull her to
Oh,
the
good.
light.
Excellent.
But
Um,
so we're all
but
cats over
I've
here,
got
so it'll be great to take the
I've,
whole family.
well, my whole family's cats as well, except for one rebel child. Um, Ennis is
It's never too late.
32 years old. Oh, he's a die-hard Tiger supporter. I don't know if I can ever
Oh,
get
yeah, it
him
might
on
be a bit
side.
hard after their recent success then.
So next week we're going to the game together, hopefully we'll do okay. But he's unbearable. If they win, he will be unbearable. But anyway,
There's
that's life.
swings and roundabouts. These things happen, though. I guess everyone gets their time in the sun. Let's just hope the Tigers don't get theirs next week. In fact,
Yeah,
for
that's
the
right.
sake of me being very selfish, my footy tipping right now, let's hope they don't get their don't get it tonight. Let's hope Carlton can chase them down.
Paul, bad news. They just kicked another goal, so it's
Ah, did they?
44-64. But there's 17 minutes to go.
That's time
Anyway,
enough.
yeah. So
Harry Mackay can kick
excellent.
5 in no time,
Oh, look, you know,
or Charlie
one
Curnow.
thing about one thing about this year, it's very unpredictable. Even
Yeah,
Collingwood has come good at the end. You know, like they're a formidable team. Like
yeah.
you wouldn't think it, but
You don't want to take them
but
lightly.
you don't want to take them lightly. Brisbane is a dynamic team. You know, I think Port Adelaide still, a threat. I think Sydney Swans is another good team. I just think like Melbourne, Geelong, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, and the Sydney Swans and the Tigers to a certain extent, they're pretty dangerous. So when you when you look at all of that, it just means that every game from now on until the end
The
for
stakes
the
are
Cats
huge.
are huge, and I just hope that they do well and do us proud this year.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will, whatever the final outcome. So a few lighter ones
Totally.
as we start to wrap things up. Maybe I know the answer, or maybe it was
Mm.
more it's kind of a new favourite son that's starting to come through the club. Who is your current favourite player at the Cats? I mean, you mentioned Tyson
Tyson,
Stengel before. It is Tyson
Tyson
Stengel,
Stengel, Tyson. I've got to from the new player, like the new pickups that
the
we've
new
done.
crop. Yeah,
The new crop. I think he's an exciting player that's going to make a difference. Like he's kicking goals. He's not only valuable in terms of creating opportunities, but he also is very good at kicking goals. So
yeah.
so I think, but
There's
like
an
when you
extra
think,
sense for that.
yeah. So Jeremy Cameron, I'm really impressed. He's such a good player. And I've got my favourite, like Joel Selwood. I would always say he's a legend of the club. And without Joel, I think the club wouldn't be where they've been in the last decade,
Absolutely.
and where they are today. So he's a great talent. Everything that he does, he puts heart and soul into it. He goes in hard. Every single ball get, doesn't matter whether they're in front or behind, is a ball get for him that's desperate, and
Yeah.
that's what you want. And I'm so, um, you know, so impressed with Joel Selwood's mental acceptance of what a player should be like. And there are some players like Quinton Narkle. Like he's got a lot of potential. Narkle is one of those players that just needs something to click.
Yeah.
He's got the speed,
That
he's
penny
got the
dropping
skill,
moment.
that penny dropping moment, because he can be potentially one of the best players in the AFL. But I feel that he just needs to put in or think more. I suppose I don't know. It's
Almost an imposter syndrome thing to an extent, where like maybe it almost smacks of he doesn't quite feel like he belongs yet, and maybe that's been the in and out of in and out of the team over the years that maybe has been a contributing factor to that. But you're right, like those sorts of things, players have those moments. I mean, we think about Tom Hawkins, for example, in the 2011 grand final as being that moment where he just exploded in the grand final, and from that day on,
correct.
he's kicked more goals than anyone else.
Correct.
In the last 10 and a half years. So, sometimes players just need that moment, and hopefully Quinton and hopefully everyone on the club has anyone who hasn't quite had that yet. Hopefully they have it all this year, and it comes together in this beautiful Premiership Cup at the end of the year. But yeah, totally appreciate where you're coming from there. Who's the greatest cat that you've ever seen?
I'm a big fan of Lingy. Like I really
Lingy?
am. Yeah.
I mean, he's a champion. I totally agree with you.
He's a champion, but he's a champion person, human being. Like I mean,
would love to have him on the show one day.
I spoke to him on numerous occasions. I'd go to the edge and have a few beers with him and just talk about after we retired, obviously. But just talking to the guy, he's such a good human being. Do you know what I mean? You know how you can sense it.
There's an inherent thing that some people have, yeah.
Exactly, and I just think he's such a wonderful human being. He's a fantastic sports person. He's everything. He's a complete unit, and I reckon, Cameron Lee.
No, that's a fantastic choice. Schoolyard pick style. Who would you choose? Gary Jr., Gary Senior.
Oh,
it's the old favourite question.
Oh goodness me! I'd pick Junior.
That's fair. Fantastic choice. What about, and again, we kind of spoke about that next generation that's coming through, and I guess I'll discount Tyson Stengel from that because he at least has had a few years in the system already. Who's that next coming through player that really is taking your fancy? Is it the golden one, Sam De Koning, that everyone's in love with? Is there someone else that you've taken a bit of liking to that maybe hasn't got?
I like Dempsey.
There was something about that game that he played.
Yeah, he's going to be like, he's got a following too. I've never.
Oh yeah,
football.
The friends.
His friends are all like,
Trip down to Tassie for it too.
We need that. We need that. We need that. That sort of interaction between the crowd and the ground and the player. And from what I see, like, he's actually a very talented player.
Yeah.
He's both Dempsey and De Koning, obviously they'll fill out and get a bit more stronger and get a bit more muscle and a bit more meat on the bone. And I tell you, look out once they do, because they'll be a really they'll contest everything and most likely win those contests because of their pure athleticism, but also their how tall they are and their reach is magnificent. And if they put a bit of muscle on, look out! Like, they're good in the air, they're good with their kicks, and good tackling too, which I noticed. So, and I think De Koning and obviously Tom Stewart in the defence, they work so well together.
Yeah,
I'm really impressed. Our young talent coming through is just phenomenal. Like Brandon Close, Brad Close.
Yes.
So Brad Close, to me, like I love his long sleeve jumper. Doesn't matter whether it is, he wears his long sleeve jumper, and he is such a dynamic and exciting player as well. Like when he gets the ball, you think he's going to do something special.
Game
is going to
smarts.
happen.
He's got those game smarts.
He's got those game smarts,
It's an intangible, immeasurable thing too.
He knows where to be at the right time, and when he gets the ball, he maximises its efficiency and maximises its potential to end up as a goal. And from that perspective, like I can go through the whole list. Like we've got such a strong, dynamic, young player group that's coming through. It'd be sad to see some of the older players go, and at some point they will make a decision about that. But I'm confident that they'll be ably be substituted with people that are really talented.
Yeah.
So we've got some of the, Paddy's a great, contributor to the Cats. Obviously, he's such a dynamic player. I love him. You think of Duncan. Duncan is one of those ones that is a playmaker. And so our older player group complements the younger player group.
Yes.
And to a point where the younger player group might have a bit more legs to them and run a bit more, but certainly the wise skills that the older players have make us a great team. So, look, I don't want to put the moz on us or anything, but I'm really excited at how we're performing. Now we're normally really bad off a break.
So maybe it's a good thing that we've got the Eagles. I guess as of when this goes up, we'll know once this episode goes live. We'll already know.
I just hope, I'm not even going to say it. I just hope it's not the first Eagles game that they're going to come back at home and win, and we're going to lose it because we've had. That's not going to happen, right?
Surely not.
That's not going to happen.
But again, by the time this episode goes live, the world will know already. So let's be careful not to put our feet in it. I suppose we don't want to make too many.
We're gonna smash them. We're gonna
80+ points.
We're going to increase. I had a bet with the West Coast Minister for Sport when we played against them in the finals, that if they beat us, that we would have the colours of their colours at the MCG, but if we beat them, they would have our colours in Perth at their stadium. Unfortunately, we have to light up our ground at the MCG their colours. It was a bet. A bet's a bet, right?
Yeah, you got to follow through.
So
these things happen, though, right?
It's not going to happen this Saturday.
No, not this week. And we get another crack at them in the final round of the season too.
We do.
So
we do.
Hopefully that's a good momentum builder for what is hopefully a really successful finals campaign going forward. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this journey, this love of the Cats and everything that you've kind of had to do with the club. It's a really fascinating perspective. I mean, we spoke before about how Steve was on the show last week, but your involvement with the club has been on a far more local sort of level there, and you've more day-to-day sort of interactions with the club. And so it's a really fantastic perspective that you've brought today that really complements what we heard from Steve just last week. And I really appreciate hearing all of these stories and thrilled that you're able to share them with the club. We can all look forward to May the 1st next year. And hopefully that from that point onwards, 40,000 every single week is what we're seeing at the ground. And I guess we all owe you a massive thank you for the part that you have played in making that possible and everything you've done for the community as well, more broadly.
I'm part of a broad team. It's not just me. Obviously, I'm part of a broad team, and I'm just happy to have led that at that point in time. But look, it's a collective. I think everybody's involved with this, and they say that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. But certainly, I can say that there was a huge number of people that were involved in these successes. So thank you very much for those sentiments, though.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of it with us.
Thank you very much.
And viewers, listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this latest episode. Make sure to subscribe to The Hoop Show. Ben and all his incredible work on YouTube there. Make sure if you're a podcast fan, if you like audio versions, make sure to catch the Behind the Play podcast feed so that you can tune into this, the past episodes, and everything to come in the future. I really appreciate it.
And go Cats!
Go Cats, and we're keeping an eye on that scoreboard. Carlton are coming back. But we'll not enough of that about them. This is a Cats show. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching and listening. Remain Geelong strong, and I will see you next time. Thank you again, John.
See ya. Take care.